35 million American adults have kidney disease right now. 9 out of 10? No idea. The early number that gives it away sits quietly on a lab report most people never ask about. And that number is your creatinine. In the next few minutes, you will learn what your reading means, why two people with the same number can be in very different trouble, and the single value saved for last that means see a specialist this week. I spent years in an emergency room, and I want to tell you where I met this disease. Almost never at the beginning. I met it at the end. People came in swollen, exhausted, short of breath, with blood pressure that would not come down, and their kidneys were already running at a fraction of what they should. And again, when I pulled their old records, the warning had been sitting there for years on a lab report. In a single number nobody had explained to them. That is the part that has stayed with me, and it is the reason I am making this. So here is what I am going to walk you through. First, what creatinine actually is and why your body makes it. Then the normal range and the trap hiding inside that word normal. Then the reveal that matters most, the reason your neighbor and you can have the exact same number and be in completely different shape. After that, the number that actually tells the truth. And finally, the one reading. That means you do not wait, you do not watch, you get in front of a specialist. Stay with me, because most people get the first number and stop there. And the first number alone can fool you badly. Let me start with the belief I want to take apart, because almost everyone in this country holds it, and it is costing people their kidneys. The belief is simple. My last blood test was normal, so my kidneys are fine. It sounds completely reasonable. It is also one of the most dangerous assumptions I dealt with in emergency medicine. Here is why. Your kidneys are built with an enormous amount of spare capacity. Think of them the way you would think of a backup generator wired into a house. The house can lose a shocking amount of its power supply, and the lights still come on, the refrigerator still hums, everything looks normal from the living room. You would have no idea anything was wrong until the reserve was nearly used up. Your kidneys work the same way. You can lose up to about half of your kidney function, half, and your creatinine can still sit inside the normal range on the report. The reserve is covering for the damage. The lights are still on, but behind the wall, the system is already running on much less than it should. That is the whole problem with kidney disease in one image. It does not hurt. There is no ache, no obvious signal, no moment where your body grabs you by the collar and says, go get checked. It is quiet. It is quiet for years. And a normal looking number, read without any context, tells a lot of people that everything is fine right up until the point where it very much is not. So when I say a normal creatinine does not always mean healthy kidneys, I am not being dramatic. I am describing the exact thing I watched happen to person after person. The number was technically normal. The kidneys were not. Now, I know what some of you are already thinking. You are thinking, if this is so important, why has my own doctor never sat me down and gone through this with me? That is a fair question, and I want to answer it honestly, because the answer is not that your doctor is careless. Your primary care doctor is often looking at that number in the middle of a 15-minute visit with 10 other things to cover, and if it sits inside the reference range, it does not raise a flag on their screen. It is not that they do not care. It is that the system is built to catch numbers that fall outside the box. And this is a number that can stay inside the box while trouble builds, which is exactly why it helps for you to understand it yourself. You are not replacing your doctor. You are learning what to ask them for. So let us build this from the ground up. What is creatinine really? Forget the textbook version. Here is what it is. Every day, all day long, your muscles do a small amount of ordinary wear and tear. As they work and repair, they produce a waste product, and that waste product is creatinine. It is not something you eat. It is not a toxin from outside. It is just the exhaust your muscles give off simply by being muscles. Your body has no use for it, so it needs to get rid of it. And the organ in charge of getting rid of it is your kidney. This is where the first metaphor earns its keep. And I want you to hold on to it because everything else hangs off it. Picture your kidney as a filter, not a fancy one. Picture the paper filter in a coffee maker. Every minute of every day, your entire blood supply is passing through these filters. And the job is to let the good stuff stay in the blood while the waste gets strained out and sent into your urine. Creatinine is one of the things that gets strained out. So your muscles are constantly pouring a steady trickle of creatinine into your blood, and your kidneys are constantly filtering it back out. In a healthy person, those two things stay in balance, and the level in your blood stays low and steady. Now, watch what happens when the filter starts to clog. If the kidney filter is damaged, if it is not straining as well as it used to, then it cannot clear the creatinine as fast as the muscles are making it. So the creatinine starts to back up in the blood. The level rises. And that is the entire logic of the test. A creatinine blood test does not measure your kidneys directly. It measures the waste that is piling up because your kidneys are not clearing it fast enough. The number in the blood goes up as the filter goes down. High creatinine is the puddle forming because the drain is slow. That is why this one cheap, ordinary blood test, the kind included in almost any basic panel your doctor orders, is such a useful early clue. It is a window into how well that filter is working without anyone having to look at the kidney at all. When your creatinine is low and stable, the drain is keeping up. When it starts creeping up over months and years, the drain is falling behind. And the beauty of it is you have probably already had this test done more than once. The number is very likely sitting in your chart right now. Most people have simply never been told what it is or what it is quietly saying. So let us talk about what your actual number means, because this is the part people search for and almost never get explained properly. When your creatinine comes back, it is reported in milligrams per deciliter, written as mg per dl. And for most adults, the normal reference range runs roughly from 0.6 to 1.2 mg per dl. Write that down if you like. 0.6 to 1.2. If your number sits in there, the lab prints it in black, not red, and everybody moves on. But even that range has a detail hiding in it that matters. Men tend to run a little higher, roughly 0.7 to 1.3. Women tend to run a little lower, roughly 0.6 to 1.1. And that difference is not random. It is your first clue to the single most important idea in this entire video. So let me put a pin in it and come right back, because this is where creatinine gets genuinely tricky and where reading the number by itself will lead you straight into a mistake. Here is the question that unlocks everything. Why do men run higher than women on the exact same healthy kidneys? The answer is muscle. Remember where creatinine comes from. It comes from muscle. It is the exhaust of muscle doing its ordinary work. So the more muscle you carry, the more creatinine you produce every single day. No matter how perfect your kidneys are, men, on average, carry more muscle than women. So men, on average, pour more creatinine into their blood. Their kidneys are not worse. There is simply more waste coming down the line, so the steady level sits a little higher. More muscle, more creatinine. Less muscle, less creatinine. Hold that, because now I am going to show you the reveal that I most want you to walk away with, the one I want you to tell somebody about. Two people, same lab, same day, same result. A creatinine of 1.2, right at the top edge of normal, but still normal. On paper, identical. The first is a man of 45. He lifts, he is broad through the shoulders, he carries a lot of muscle. The second is a woman of 78, frail, thin through the arms. She has lost a good deal of muscle over the years, the way many of us do as we age. Same number, 1.2. Now think it through with me, because this is the whole game. The 45-year-old is carrying a lot of muscle, which means he is producing a lot of creatinine. For his blood level to sit at only 1.2, his kidneys must be filtering beautifully, hauling all that waste out fast. That 1.2 is a sign of strength. His filter is excellent. The 78-year-old is carrying very little muscle, which means she is barely producing any creatinine at all. So the fact that her level has still climbed all the way up to 1.2 tells a very different story. With so little waste coming down the line, her level should be sitting low. It is not. It is at the top of the range, which means her kidneys are struggling to clear even that small amount. That same 1.2 on her is a warning. Her filter may already be in real trouble. Read that again in your head. The identical number. On one body, it means your kidneys are strong. On the other body, it means your kidneys may be failing. This is why I told you at the start that two people with the same creatinine can be in completely different shape. It is not a technicality. It is the difference between reassurance and a red flag hiding inside one printed number. And it is exactly why creatinine alone, judged against a one-size-fits-all range, quietly misleads the people who need the truth the most, which is very often older adults with less muscle, the people most likely to have kidney trouble in the first place. This is the trap. The person whose muscle has thinned with age produces less creatinine, so their number looks falsely reassuring and their real kidney decline gets masked. The report says normal. The kidney says otherwise. And if all anyone ever does is glance at that number and nod, the warning gets missed in precisely the people it matters for most. So if you are over 65, if you have lost some muscle and some strength over the years, I want you to hear this clearly. Your creatinine number is not lying to you, but it is not telling you the whole truth on its own. A 1.1 that looks perfectly fine for a strong 40-year-old may be quietly covering up meaningful loss in you. That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to get the second number, the one that fixes this exact problem. And I am going to give it to you in a moment. Because here is the good news. And I do not want you sitting in fear even for a paragraph. There is already a number that takes your age, your sex, and this whole muscle problem into account. And it is very likely printed on the same report right next to your creatinine, where almost nobody thinks to look. Before I get to it, sit with why this matters in your real life, not in the abstract. If your kidneys are quietly declining and nobody catches it, the losses that follow are the ones this audience fears most. It is blood pressure that will not behave. It is fluid backing up, swelling in the ankles, getting winded on stairs you used to take without a thought. Down the road, at the far end, it is dialysis, hours hooked to a machine several times a week, the end of driving yourself wherever you please, the end of that independence. And the whole point of catching this early, years early, at the stage of a slightly rising number rather than a swollen body, is that early is when you still have every option on the table. Early is when the direction can still be changed. That is not fear. That is the reason the number is worth understanding while it is still just a number. I want to name something else because I know how this lands. Some of you are hearing all this and thinking, I feel completely fine, so surely mine is fine. I understand why you would think that, but feeling fine is exactly what kidney disease feels like for years. That is not a comfort. That is the warning. The people who did best, the ones I saw hold on to their kidney function and their independence, were almost never the ones who felt sick and came running. They were the ones who looked at a boring number on a routine test, asked one more question about it, and caught the drift early while they still felt perfectly fine. Feeling fine and being fine are not the same thing here, and the gap between them is the whole disease. So here is the number that fixes the whole problem. It is called your eGFR. That stands for estimated glomerular filtration rate, which is a mouthful. So let me translate it into plain English right now. Your eGFR is simply an estimate of how much blood your kidneys are actually filtering every minute. It takes your creatinine and then it does the math you cannot do in your head. It adjusts for your age and your sex, which means it accounts for the muscle problem I just walked you through. It takes that raw creatinine number, folds in who you are, and hands you back a single number that actually reflects how well your filter is working. Let me give you the cleanest way to think about creatinine versus eGFR, because once you see it, you will never confuse them again. Picture the dashboard of your car. Creatinine is like the odometer, the raw mileage, a raw reading that means very little until you know the context of the car it is attached to. eGFR is like the fuel gauge. It is the needle that actually tells you how much you have left in the tank. When you get in the car, you do not squint at the odometer to decide whether you can make it home. You look at the fuel gauge. And with your kidneys, the fuel gauge is your eGFR. That is the needle to watch. Now, here is the part that makes it usable, because eGFR comes with a scale that doctors around the world agree on, and I want you to actually know where you stand on it. A normal, healthy eGFR is 90 or above. That is a full tank. From 60 to 89 is still considered normal to mildly reduced. And on its own, with nothing else going on, that is not something to lose sleep over, especially as we age. But watch the line that matters. When your eGFR drops below 60 and stays below 60 for 3 months or more, that is the formal definition of chronic kidney disease. Below 60 for 3 months, that is the threshold. That is the line where normal ends and a real condition begins. And it is a line your raw creatinine will never show you clearly on its own. Let me walk you down the rest of the scale, because the stages tell you exactly how much reserve is left in that tank. From 45 to 59 is stage 3A. From 30 to 44 is stage 3B. These are the middle stages where a lot of people live for years and where there is genuinely a great deal you can do to protect what is left. From 15 to 29 is stage 4, getting serious, the tank running low. And below 15 is stage 5, which is kidney failure, the territory of dialysis or transplant. Now you can see the whole road. 90 is a full tank. 60 is where the warning light comes on. 15 is where the engine stops. And your eGFR tells you tonight, roughly where on that road you are standing. So this is your first real action, and it is a simple one. The next time you have blood work done, do not just ask if your kidneys are okay and accept a yes. Ask for the number. Ask, what is my eGFR? Write it down. And then at your next test, ask for it again and compare. Because a single eGFR is a snapshot, but 2 or 3 of them over a couple of years is a trend, and the trend is what tells the real story. A number holding steady at 70 is a very different thing from a number that was 85 3 years ago and is 70 today. The direction is the message. One reading is a photo. A few readings are a movie, and the movie is what you want to be watching. Let me tell you about a man named Walter, because he puts all of this in one place. Walter was 71 a retired mail carrier outside Kansas City, 30 odd years on his feet, and then retirement. And like a lot of us, he slowed down and softened up. He felt fine. He would have told you he was healthy as a horse. He had high blood pressure, controlled well enough with a pill, and he took ibuprofen most days for an old knee that never quite forgave him for those decades of walking. Walter got routine blood work every year, and every year his creatinine came back around 1.3 high end. But his doctor's eye saw a big retired guy and a number in a familiar spot, and it never got a second look. What nobody plotted was the other number, because when you actually pulled his eGFRs and lined them up, the picture was not flat at all. 5 years back, he had been around 75, then 68, then 61, and the year I am telling you about, 54. His creatinine had barely twitched, but his eGFR had walked quietly down out of the normal range and across the line into chronic kidney disease, stage 3A. And no one had said the words out loud. Walter's story is not a tragedy, and I am not telling it to frighten you. It is the opposite, because 54 is not 15. Walter was not in danger of dialysis next month. He was standing at the exact spot where this video is trying to catch you. The early, quiet, changeable stage, where the smartest possible thing is not panic, but attention. When his eGFR trend finally got looked at properly, a few things changed. The daily ibuprofen came off the table, and I will explain why that mattered so much in a minute. His blood pressure target got tightened, and he got the second free number I promised you at the very beginning, the one that turned out to matter even more than his eGFR. That is where we are going next, and it is the reading that decides whether you are watching this from home or sitting across from a specialist. But first, pull the lesson out of Walter, because it is the lesson of this whole video. His creatinine looked normal every single year, judged on its own and said nothing is wrong. It was the eGFR, the adjusted number, the fuel gauge, that told the truth. And only when someone bothered to line up several years of it and look at the direction, one number, glanced at once, hid the problem. The right number, tracked over time, revealed it. That is the difference between missing this and catching it. And it is available to you on lab work. You are very likely already getting. Before I give you that last number, let me stay with Walter's ibuprofen for a moment, because this is one of the most common quiet accelerators I saw, and almost nobody connects it. Those everyday painkillers, the ones you buy off the shelf without a second thought, ibuprofen and naproxen, the ones in the bottles marked for aches and arthritis, they are a family called NSAIDs. Taken now and then for a headache, they are fine for most people. But taken most days, month after month, they squeeze down the blood flow through those kidney filters. Go back to the coffee filter picture. You are running the machine every day with the flow pinched over years. That quietly wears the filter down. I am not telling you to throw them out. I am telling you that if you are taking one of these most days for a chronic ache, that is a conversation to have with your doctor, especially if your eGFR is already drifting. There are other ways to handle the pain that do not lean on the kidney. There are 3 more accelerators worth naming, because if you can see them, you can slow this whole thing down. The first is simple dehydration. Kidneys are filtering machines, and they do not like running dry. Chronically underwatered day after day is extra strain on the filter. For most people, the fix is genuinely as ordinary as drinking more plain water through the day. Not a heroic amount, just enough that you are not running your filters parched. The second is high blood pressure, and this one is the big one. So hear me. High pressure inside those tiny, delicate kidney filters batters them over time. Think of water pressure so high it slowly wears out the fine mesh of a screen. And here is the cruel loop. Damaged kidneys also push your blood pressure up, so high pressure hurts the kidneys, and hurt kidneys raise the pressure, each one feeding the other. That is why controlling blood pressure is one of the most powerful things you can do for your kidneys. And I want to give you the American number because it has changed, and a lot of people are working off an old one. The current threshold here from the American Heart Association is 130 over 80, not 140 over 90, 130 over 80. If your pressure is running above that, that is not just a heart conversation, it is a kidney conversation too. The third accelerator is diabetes, high blood sugar, which is the single leading cause of kidney disease in this country. High sugar in the blood is hard on those filters year after year, which is why anyone with diabetes or prediabetes should be watching their kidney numbers with particular care. If that is you, the numbers in this video are not optional background. They are part of your main event. Now, the number I saved for last. Because your creatinine and your eGFR, as useful as they are, share one blind spot. And this last number is the one that sees into it. Both creatinine and eGFR mostly go abnormal once the filter is already clearing poorly, once damage is already added up. They are very good, but they tend to move after the trouble is underway. There is another test that can catch kidney damage earlier, sometimes years earlier, before your eGFR has even started to slip. And it is not a fancy scan or an expensive procedure. It is a simple urine test, and it is very likely already available to you. It is called the urine albumin to creatinine ratio. On your report, it may show up as albumin to creatinine ratio, or as the letters UACR, or simply as urine albumin. Let me tell you exactly what it does, because it is beautiful in its simplicity. Albumin is a protein, an important one, that belongs in your blood. A healthy kidney filter is fine enough to keep that protein where it belongs in the bloodstream and out of your urine. So when albumin starts leaking through into the urine, even in tiny amounts, it means the filter has begun to spring microscopic leaks. It means the membrane is damaged, even if it is still, for now, clearing waste well enough to keep your eGFR looking normal. Do you see why this is the early alarm? Your eGFR tells you how much filtering capacity you have left, the level in the tank. Your urine albumin tells you something different. It tells you whether the filter itself has started to leak. And the leak often shows up first. Think of a smoke detector. It goes off while the fire is still small, before the smoke fills the room, before the fuel gauge has even moved. Protein in the urine is frequently the very first sign that kidneys are in trouble, and it can appear while every other number still looks fine. Every other number, normal, and this one already whispering. And here is the single reading I promised you at the very start. The one that means do not just watch this, get in front of a specialist. It is not one alarming creatinine on one bad day. It is a urine albumin that is up, and especially a urine albumin that is rising across more than one test. That is the flag. A rising amount of protein in your urine is the finding that means this has moved past watchful waiting. That is the reading that means ask to see a nephrologist, a kidney specialist this week. Not because you are about to fail, because a leaking filter caught early is a filter you can often still protect, and a rising leak ignored is how people end up at the far end of that scale we talked about. Persistent rising protein in the urine is the difference between a problem you get ahead of and a problem that gets ahead of you. Let me add one more tool for a specific group of you, because I promised to account for that muscle problem all the way through. If you are older and frail, or you have lost a lot of muscle, or you are very heavily muscled, and there is real doubt about whether your creatinine is telling the truth, there is another blood marker called cystatin C. It measures kidney filtering in a way that does not lean on your muscle mass the way creatinine does. It is not on every routine panel, but it exists, and it is exactly the kind of thing to ask your doctor about if your creatinine and the way you feel do not seem to match. It is the tiebreaker when the muscle question clouds the picture. Ask for it by name. So let me put all of this into a clear plan of action, because information you cannot use is just anxiety. And I told you at the start, I would never leave you there. Here is how to think about urgency from calm to serious, so you know exactly what to do with whatever you find. Start with the calm end. If your numbers are all in the normal range, your eGFR 90 or above, no protein in your urine, then this is simple. You monitor. That is all. You keep getting your routine blood work, and each time you ask for the eGFR and you note it, so that a few years from now you have a trend, not just a snapshot. That is the whole job at this stage. Notice and track. Nothing more. If your eGFR sits in that 60 to 89 band and everything else looks clean, you write it down and you bring it up at your next regular visit. Not an emergency, just a number you now keep an eye on. Say to your doctor, I would like to watch this over time. Can we compare it next year? If your eGFR has crossed below 60, or you have any protein showing up in your urine at all, that is when you pick up the phone and call your primary care doctor and schedule a visit specifically about your kidneys, not the next annual physical whenever it lands. A visit about this. And if your eGFR is dropping test over test, or your urine albumin is rising, that is when you ask to be seen this week and you say the words that get you moved up the list. My kidney numbers are getting worse, and I would like this looked at. That, as I said, is also the point to ask about a nephrologist, a kidney specialist. A good primary care doctor manages early kidney disease all the time. But rising protein or a falling eGFR is exactly what the specialist is for. Now, kidney disease itself is a slow, quiet condition. So most of this lives at the calm end of the ladder, the phone call and the appointment, not the ambulance. But I would be failing you if I did not name the emergencies, because kidneys sit close to the heart. If you ever have sudden, severe shortness of breath, or your ankles and legs swell up fast along with trouble breathing, or you suddenly are making almost no urine at all, that is not a next week problem. That is, go to urgent care or the emergency room now. And for chest pain or pressure, for fainting, for stroke signs, a drooping face, weak arm, slurred speech, you call 911 and you do not drive yourself. I want to say that last part plainly, because Americans do this to save money and it costs them dearly. Do not drive yourself to the hospital in a true emergency. An ambulance starts treatment on the way, and the ER sees you faster when you arrive by ambulance. Those minutes are the ones that matter. And on the money, because it is real, and I am not going to pretend it isn't, I know an ER visit is expensive, and I know that is a genuine reason people wait. But over and over, I saw people who waited, and the damage done while they waited cost them far more in health and in dollars than the visit ever would have. Being checked and sent home is a good outcome. That is not wasting anyone's time. Here is your self-monitoring toolkit, the concrete version, so you leave with something to actually do. First, the two numbers. At your next lab visit, you are asking for two things by name: your eGFR and your urine albumin, sometimes called the albumin to creatinine ratio. Those two together, the fuel gauge and the smoke detector, give you a far truer picture than creatinine ever will alone. Ask for both. Write both down. Second, your blood pressure. If you have a cuff at home and they are inexpensive now, take your pressure at about the same time each morning for 7 days and write down each reading. One reading in a doctor's office tells you very little. 7 mornings in a row tells you what your pressure actually runs. And since pressure and kidneys are so tightly linked, that log is genuinely useful information to bring in. And if you are on Medicare, I want to hand you the easiest win in this entire video. Your Medicare annual wellness visit costs you nothing. No copay, no deductible, and most people never use it. That visit is the perfect place to say, I want to check my kidney function. Can we look at my eGFR and get a urine albumin? Many of these basic tests are covered, but ask whether it is covered before you go. That one question saves people a lot of grief. You are not asking for anything exotic. You are asking for two ordinary numbers that could tell you years ahead of any symptom, whether your kidneys need attention. Let me come back to the doubt some of you are still holding, the one I raised early, because it deserves a real answer. My doctor never brought this up. So how important can it really be? Here is the honest truth. Your doctor is not hiding anything from you. In a short visit, a creatinine inside the range simply does not trip an alarm. And there is a lot to get through. This is not about going around your doctor. It is about walking in with two specific requests instead of a vague worry. Doctors respond to specifics. Ask, what is my eGFR? Ask, what is my urine albumin? And you have just turned a rushed visit into a focused one. That is you and your doctor on the same side looking at the right numbers. So let me bring this all together into the one pattern I want you to carry out of here. Because if you remember nothing else, remember this shape. 3 numbers, 3 jobs. Creatinine is the raw clue. It is the muscle waste in your blood. Useful, cheap, but it cannot be trusted on its own, because the same number means strength in one body and trouble in another. eGFR is the adjusted gauge. It takes that raw clue, corrects for your age and sex and muscle, and tells you how full the tank actually is. And below 60 for 3 months is where kidney disease begins. And the urine albumin is the early alarm, the smoke detector, the leak in the filter that often shows up first, and a rising one is the reading that means see a specialist. Raw clue, adjusted gauge, early alarm, creatinine, eGFR, urine albumin. That is the whole video in 6 words. And hold on to the picture underneath it. Your kidneys are a filter with a huge backup reserve, which is exactly why they can lose half their function while the number still reads normal and you still feel completely fine. Feeling fine is not the same as being fine. That gap is the whole disease, and the numbers are how you see across it while there is still time to act. None of this requires you to overhaul your life tonight. That is not what I am asking. I am asking for one small, specific step, the kind that actually changes outcomes. At your very next lab visit, ask for 2 numbers, your eGFR and your urine albumin, and write them both down. That is it. That one question asked once is how thousands of people catch this early enough to keep their kidneys, stay off dialysis, stay in their own homes, and keep driving themselves wherever they want to go for many more years. You do not need to be perfect here. You need the next useful step, and that is the step. If you have a parent, a spouse, or a friend with high blood pressure or diabetes, and honestly, that is most of us, this is the video to send them, because they almost certainly have a creatinine sitting in their chart that nobody has ever explained, and 2 numbers they have never thought to ask for. Send it to them today. It is a 2-minute favor that could add years to someone you love. Take care of those filters. They have a lot of work left to do, and so do you.